Hi, and welcome to Far From Home with me, Mabel Ninen, your host. Our guest on this podcast today is Patrick Kizehe. Did I say that right?
Actually, very good.
Welcome, Patrick, to our show.
Thank you so much.
Patrick was born and raised in the Democratic Republic of Congo, which was previously known as Zaire. And due to political instability and a civil war, he fled into the neighboring country of Uganda, where he lived for 10 years almost as a refugee. He emigrated to Canada 15 years ago from the refugee camp in Uganda and founded a charity called Giving Refugees Hope. And this charity supports refugees from all over Africa who have fled to Uganda. And currently, GRHU runs a children's home where it supports 18 orphan children and sponsors a training program that helps equip widowed women to learn skills to help them get back on their feet in Uganda. And they're also building a medical center. Patrick is also an intercultural trainer, a pastor, and a social worker. And through his social work, he supports the adults and children in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And that's where he lives with his wife of 16 years, Immaculée, and they have 5 children. We are so blessed and honored, Patrick, that you are here and that you're willing to share your story with us.
Thank you.
So let's start with a question that I ask, all my immigrant and refugee friends. You grew up in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So tell us what your favorite childhood memory was. I know you said earlier that you have many, but maybe one or two of your best.
I think thank you so much for having me, and thank you for reaching many people. So one of my child memory, which I will never forget, is about soccer. So the soccer field to play in the soccer. I still remember when we had a little bit of tournaments as a children, and we used to play in most of the evenings back in Congo. And it was really something which used to put children together after the school. That was the game which is really acceptable. Like most people, that's what we used to play, and I used really to enjoy it a lot. The other thing which I used to like, which I don't do it better, but I love it, it's about singing. So, but now I have ended there up being just a listener. I like listening the songs. So, but it was one of the things which I used to try when I was young back in Congo.
Oh, okay. Did
Yeah,
you have like a fake microphone and pretend like you're singing?
absolutely. So we used to try to fake singing and all that. And I used really to enjoy it up to now. Sometime I try it, but it's not something which I would do on camera.
Yeah, and I don't want to ask you to sing or show us your skill, but thank you for sharing that. So tell us about your childhood and what changed. In your bio, I mentioned that there was political instability and civil war. So how did that affect you and your family, and what made you take the decision to flee to Uganda?
Uh, so to understand my reason why to flee from Congo and reaching in Uganda, there is a bunch of things which happened before that thing happened. So in 1994, I will take you back so that you can understand where this conflict came from.
Sure.
And how did the family end up to be in Uganda as a refugee? In 1994, there was a genocide in Rwanda, which consumed over close to 1 million Tutsis. So after the genocide, the perpetrators who had committed genocide in Congo, they moved inside, who have committed genocide in Rwanda, they moved into Congo. Unfortunately, when they reached in Congo, they saw that for us, we are Tutsis. They said that we are Tutsis and we look like a Tutsis of Rwanda. For them to be able to settle in Congo, they had to create something like, for us, we are foreigners in our own land. My grandpa is 82 years old now, and his grandfather was born in Congo. Congo, to be called Congo, my grandfather were there. So when these people reach in Congo, Congo itself, there is more than 220 tribes, and people used to live in peace, and there was no problem at all. So they started sowing hatred, saying that we are settlers, we have settled into their land, we don't belong there. We immigrated from Burundi, Uganda, and Tanzania, and we are the people who are supposed to be chased away from the land to go back into our country. But on our understanding, we had no other country except Congo. So for myself, before all those things, we used to live a very happy life. My dad was a traditional chief, which meant it's like here in the system here, it's like being a judge. We lived a very comfortable life. I still remember we used to have 2 houses, mostly in Africa for people who are middle class. Their houses are fenced.
Mm-hmm.
We used to live in a very fancy house, and we didn't know anything of other countries, or we didn't wish to go anywhere except living in Congo. So unfortunately, by then I was 14 years old. People started, when we used to come back from school, the parents used to tell us, please come back when it's a light.
Mm-hmm.
When it's a light, please come back. We didn't know, but sometimes we could hear the guns going on far away. But it didn't have really effect, and we didn't think that it's a big deal as a child, because the parents were like, no, it's safe, but please be coming early and come home. So we lived there for quite a few years, living together. The main activities in my neighborhood, people, most of them were Christian. Others used to practice African religion, which is just not going to church. And people used to live really happily. Most of us were cattle keepers. People used to keep cattle keepers, goats, and all that. And I always joke that it's a land where there is no such a thing as a definition of stress, because it does not exist. So that's how the thing started there.
Okay. So you were beginning to feel some effects, your family was, but you said that as a child, you didn't think much of it. So then tell us how your family, or I don't know if it's just you or your family, how did you end up in the Ugandan refugee camp?
Thank you. So I still remember it was on Wednesday, and as I mentioned, with my favorite hobbies when I was a child, we had a soccer match that day, and we are supposed to be playing in that match like just one community versus another community. Around 5 p.m. In Congo, we had a gunshot, but we are still in a class. So while we were in a class, we had it at first, people thought it is a balloon maybe or something going on, but it went on being so loud. Then the teacher came in and told us to leave and go back home. It was a very, very chaotic. When we went outside the class, the school at least had over 1,000 children. So you can imagine everybody being on a pitch and just leaving, heading home. Good enough, it was not a far place. It was not far from the school to where we used to live. It was a walkable distance. So we walked, but when we were walking outside the school, we saw we saw houses burning in another village and hearing gunshots. We ran towards the house. When we reached the house, that's when we found people coming outside from our home, who was my auntie who lives now in Ottawa, my uncle who died. And then we came out, they came out saying, let us free, let us go. I had my backpack for the school, and we just dropped it there, and we started heading like in the east, freeing. Very chaotic. So that's where my uncle was shot and stayed, and for him, he stayed there. And my auntie just kept on, let us keep on going, let us keep on going. And fortunately, we didn't have an opportunity to bury him. So we went in. Around 6:30, it had started getting dark. We stayed in this small forest for another 4 hours until it got really dark. So the people decided to start moving. So for me, as a child of 14-year-old, we are not making those decisions. The parents were the one making decisions where to go.
Yeah.
So we moved from that place. To the place called Uvira, which took 4 days. I still remember there is a gentleman now, he lives in Kentucky. When we reached on one of roadblock, the poor man was really, really beaten on the back, on his back. But every roadblock which we met, they paid money. They paid money, and we kept on going. So we went until we reached in a suburb called Uvira. So that's
Patrick,
like
can I
maybe
interrupt you 1
9
second?
hours.
Okay. Yeah. I just wanted to ask you before you go on. So who was with you at this time? Is it your entire family?
So my dad had remained behind, but we didn't know where my dad was.
Okay.
My mom, my brother, and my sister were together.
Okay. Go ahead.
And we are over 200 people in a community who just ran towards. So we went and reached in a place called Uvira. So in Uvira, it's another suburb where my dad owned the house. She owned the house there. So we stayed there. We spent there for 2 weeks. But Uvira is still in Congo. So the parent had figured it out that let us move the kids from this area, go to Uvira. Once it's stable down, then we come back again to home.
Yeah. So
when we reached in Uvira, it was even more chaotic. I still have a scar here on the back of the stone. So after like a week, still we are not allowed to move because of how we look like. I already said that when people talk about racism, most people think it's black and white, but it's more than that. There, either in Uvira or in Minembwe, there was nothing like a black or white. We all look like black, but unfortunately, people have a different way of differentiating people. So that day we went in a soccer, then I was stoned here. There is another neighbor kid, Richard. For him, he was killed in the evening. Then the parents decided that Uvira is becoming unsafe. We should move to another country. So the background of Congo was colonized by Belgium, which most people who are in Congo who are educated, they speak French. Those uneducated ones, we have local languages like Swahili, Kinyamulenge, and all other languages depending on the tribe. So then we decided to go into, the parents decided, my mom, my aunt, and the other people decided to flee into Uganda. It was a long journey. We went not by our choice. I still remember when we arrived at the border, we had absolutely nothing except a mattress. We had I think $200 American when we reach on the border point. So when we reach in Uganda, all what they did, they accepted us. From that day, now our status changed from citizen to the refugees. For the sake of our viewers, there is no refugee, there is no person who is willingly trying to flee their country. It's just the last resort of the last resort. So when we reach there on the border, they allowed us, they recorded us, and took us in refugee camp. So in Uganda, Uganda was colonized by Britain. It has more than 44 tribes. They speak different languages. Now we became foreigners. Now everything changed. I still remember that the first day we arrived in a camp, they gave us machete and 2 tents. And they showed us the open space and said, that's your house. I have never, but back in Congo, there's no such a thing as even camping. So we didn't know what to do. It was in a very confusion state.
So
the church people, go ahead.
Sorry, I wanted to interrupt you a little bit again and talk about the journey. I mean, you're a young teenager at this point and
Yes.
walking, leaving behind everything that you knew. And you said like you had a happy childhood and you didn't know what is going to happen. You were facing an uncertain future. So what was going through your mind at that time? How did you process all this? What were you feeling or thinking?
We were really in a big desperate mode. We didn't know what was going on. We didn't know why people could just wake up and start hating us. We didn't know. We were asking ourselves, like myself was like, what? The children whom we used to study together, the children whom we used to live together, how does their parent change? And they are just against us. They see us as enemies. Yet we prayed together, we went to church together, we did everything together. For the sake of, for the viewers, those things happened in 1998. You may say, okay, this is very many years ago. But this week, today we are on Monday, no, last week on Wednesday in Goma, a person who happened to look like myself was burned alive because of how he looks like. The civil war is still going on. Unfortunately, the government does not do anything about it. So coming back to your question, we are just in a state of disbelief of what is going on. We didn't really understand what is going on. I still remember when we reached in a camp, we told Mom we could at least have stayed home and died there instead of coming in this country where we don't know anybody, where nothing operates.
Yeah.
So the life in a refugee camp, it's one of the things which we never wish to someone to live in.
Yeah. So tell us more about that. You said
Yes.
they just gave you a machete and 2 tents.
They gave us 2
up.
machetes. Yeah. They gave us 2 tents and they said, okay, that's the open land, put your house there. Either myself, my brother, and the other 2 kids whom we are together, we didn't have any experience in the construction. The church people, we found that in a camp, for those ones who had fled many years who had lived there, they housed us in a church hall. We lived in a church. Then other member from the camp, they came and helped us to build the tent. Very small tent. The luxury of 5-bedroom back home is gone. The luxury of having the maid and workers at home is gone. But one thing which we had, which was really good, we didn't have any fear. Uganda have been stable from since Idi Amin until today. But in a camp, more problems than solutions. They used to give us a 10 kilogram of beans and maize. And those ones, you have to eat it for the whole month.
Wow.
I always think that unless if it was Jesus' time where he multiplied the bread, there is no way the month you can be able to eat that thing for a month. So I always say the mothers can make something out of nothing. They're so creative. So my mom made that we are going to be eating at 3 p.m. so that we sleep when we are not so hungry. And in the morning, you are hungry, but not so much, so that the food which is there can be able to help us go through the day.
Mm.
We lived in that life for long. I still remember one time we used to go with my elder brother and go and help people in the market when they're buying something. And we help them to carry things and put it in their car or carry it somewhere. Then at the end, they either give us from that food or they give us something in return of the work which we have done. Then we buy food and bring it back home. So
Yeah.
for my dad was still back in Congo. So we lived in that state for 2 years.
Okay.
In a camp, there is no such a thing as a medical facility. There's no medical facility. There's no water, clean water. People are dying with just very small diseases.
I understand. So just for our viewers and listeners, and even for me to have some context, right? When you talk about a refugee camp, this particular camp, how many people approximately were in the camp? And my next question is, so were you allowed to go into Uganda, wherever you wanted? Were you allowed to go to school? Were you allowed to freely, take up a job or do anything? Or were there restrictions on you?
There was no restriction. The only restriction which we on us were finances. You are not allowed to get a job because you don't have a work permit. But you can go and rent any house within Uganda.
Okay.
But since it was not something which we had planned, there was no money. So the only thing which we had was to stay in a refugee camp. In a camp, by the time when we are there was 15,000 people in that small place.
Mm.
But right now, as I'm speaking, they have 135,000 in the same place which was designed for 20,000 people.
That's
That's what the
unbelievable.
refugee commander told us last year when we went there.
Yeah.
So
And
it's a very congested place. I still remember one time when one grandma, we always refer people, either sister or grandma. One person went to the medical center. The UNHCR used to have either you have a back pain or you have chest pain. They used to give you this pill, which was kind of the painkiller pill. So it was more just to work on your memory, but not to work on your sicknesses.
Mm.
Yeah, so that's how the medical system was. For the school, in the same class like this small office which we are in, we used just to sit. And it was, I can't call it a schooling because there is no either one teacher out of 100 kids in a very congested place, no books, nothing. You come and talk and then they go.
I understand. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you said 2 years you were in this place.
So after these 2 years, my dad happened also because my dad had said that he's not going to leave Congo.
Mm.
God helped, he came in. When he came in, he was able to bring some money because for him, he planned to leave Congo.
Yeah.
So then we moved outside the refugee camp and moved in Kampala, which is the capital city of Uganda. So then our life changed. But there are people who were in that camp who have spent 25 years in a camp because they have no other options. Congo is not yet ready to receive people. people are still dying across Congo. So when we reach in Kampala, for us again, the life changed. My dad was able to sell the house back home using the other channels, and we bought a house, and everything changed. We went in real schools, and we started having our life together again.
But you were still foreigners in Uganda.
We are still
right?
foreigners in Uganda. We still have some limitation of not having a job, being asked, where do you come from? Because as much as we are all African and look black, but Ugandan can know that this is a foreigner, this is not a foreigner.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, we still have, it was more better than refugee camp.
Mm-hmm.
Since now we could not be, we are eating twice a day or 3 times, whatever way we want. If you are sick, we would be able to get medical care, because medical care in Uganda, you need to pay for it. Education, you need to pay for it. Everything you need to pay for it. So if you don't have money, then there is nothing. And the social assistance, like the government social assistance, Uganda does not have a capacity to create that that venue for people to be able to benefit. So if you don't have a job, you don't have a farm, then you have nothing to live on.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm going to have to pause here, Patrick, just for a few minutes. And thank you for talking with us. We are going to continue our conversation with you in another episode, which will be part 2 of this conversation. But thank you for taking us through your journey so far, and we'll pick it up in part 2.
Bless you. Thank you.